Hey everybody, this is Kodak here, and I'm sure most of you remember that I have been working on a series called How Blankety Blank Gets You to Buy Its Starter Decks, which is about how game series persuade you to purchase their starter decks, to pick up the box, to look at it, to walk away with it. And a starter deck is a lot of people's first exposure to a card game, so it is very important to get that right. And today, I figured as an aside, I was going to take a look at the Redemption Starter Deck to see how they do this. Now, again, this is not an endorsement of any kind of religion. This is purely to take a look at the aesthetic design in this case, to take a look at the starter deck. And like I said, a starter deck is frequently somebody's first exposure to your game. So the actual starter deck has three jobs. The front needs to get you to notice the starter deck and pick it up and take a look at the back. The back needs to give the spiel to convince you to buy the deck, and then the deck's contents themselves should convince you that, yeah, you made the right choice with this purchase. And in this case, we are looking at Redemption. This is the 4th edition deck. I believe it is from either 2013 or 2014, though the game is ongoing. It's about to launch an expansion at the end of March here. But this is a card game. It's a Bible-themed card game. Like I said, this isn't an endorsement of any religion, but it's one that is sold in Christian bookstores. I have found the game in Christian bookstores before, although you can also buy it directly. And the starter deck, you'll notice up here, it says Starter Decks. Now, that with an S on the end, plural, that does imply that there are in fact 2 decks inside of this box, and if there is, that's not a bad value. A starter deck, in my opinion, should contain examples of depth. It should either like have a booster pack thrown in, but since this is specifically designed for 2 players, having 2 self-contained decks works just as well, because this is enough. That tells you to grab a friend to try out the game. To my understanding, all Redemption starter decks have been dual decks, but we'll have to see. It's priced pretty well, too. Redemption's own website on Cactus Games has this thing priced at $12.50. They even have, like, a starter tin, which includes the starter deck, and I think 5 of the older booster packs for $20, so they've, the price of entry for Redemption is pretty cheap. Although, again, that is if whoever is picking up this box understands that it does, in fact, contain 2 decks. A bit more on that later, but first we'll start with the front. On the front, we have this kind of Liefeldian-looking comic book guy, complete with feet out of view. That's kind of a big sticking point about Liefeld-style art design, although it is very impressive. We have this guy, he's wearing the golden armor. He looks like he's with the cape outstretched and all of that. He looks like he's descending or something like that. And of course we have the name down here, Redemption, although it's a little odd that they might have chosen this particular piece of artwork, because Redemption, as a card game, while it does have comic book artwork on some of its cards, for the most part its cards use religious art and stock imagery. So it's a bit unusual that they would choose this. However, I think I understand exactly why they went with this picture for the cover, and it doesn't just have to do with the fact that, due to it being a comic panel, extracting this character would be very easy. The reason I think they went with this character, and even aside from the design, it's because he's the same color as the game's logo. He's got a lot of proud dark reds and golds on him, which, just like the logo, allow both of them to pop really nicely against the green box. This is a box with a lot of pop, and it was this box that made me realize that Redemption is, in fact, still around. It was quite a fun discovery at Toy Fair this year to see that Redemption was still going. So, as far as attention grabbing is concerned, this definitely does it. It does feel a little empty around the bottom area of the deck. It says Redemption Trading Card Game, and it says Starter Decks up here, but I feel like there should be something here. We do have this large gold seal, which is maybe a little bit flat, that says 4th edition on it. It's printed directly on the box rather than with any sort of foil or embossing, and that's fine. It still gets across that this is a 4th edition. I might have gone with a brighter color for the actual letters here. I mean, the font here, it's nice and bright. They gave it a dark outline and a drop shadow, so it pops really nicely against here. This one maybe could have gone for something that's a slightly different color from the actual highlights. But yeah, here we have the drop shadow, the nice pop there, so it's clear to read. I wish there was something here. Like, this is the 4th edition of the starter deck, so I wish we had some sort of better indicator as to what that actually means. Like, maybe you could say, you know, maybe say something to the effect of 2-player starter set, like in this sort of dead space here. And the space is pretty basic here. There's not much on the top or the bottom. Usually you put like UPCs or customer information on the back, but the strong contrasting colors and visual aesthetic definitely work really well for the box. So like I said, it did catch my attention from across Toy Fair, and it made me realize that this was still a thing. They actually had a lot of stuff at the booth. They actually had a whole like Bible Toys booth where these things were, but this thing stood out. Anyway, moving on to the back. So if the customer was drawn in by the front of the box, and like I said, it does have at least some pretty good basic aesthetic design, that should make them want to pick it up and take a look at the back. And the back is where you're supposed to sell yourself. So yes, we have a good start here. We have pictures of the cards. We have a card called Angel of the Lord, which again uses that comic book artwork, but then we have 3 more that use more of the stock artwork. We have Lost Soul, we have Gideon, and we have Peter. So we have the Lost Soul, which is a very important card in the game. And then we have Gideon, Old Testament, and Peter, New Testament. We don't have any villains or enhancement cards on the back, but I think for the most part, this gets across what it's going for. So the first sentence, Redemption is a collectible trading card game of biblical adventure. Players use heroes to rescue lost souls, overcoming any evil characters who oppose them. So that tells us that's not bad. It tells us the goal of the game and how it works. So it's clearly using heroic characters from the Bible, such as Gideon or Peter, to overcome some sort of villain who we don't see on here, but that tells us that there are probably villains in the deck overcoming any evil characters who oppose them. This 4th edition starter deck is ideal for new players. It features a new streamlined rulebook and redesigned game cards. So I both like and don't like this sentence. First of all, it says things like, you know, redesigned cards and streamlined rulebooks. That leads us to believe that it is a lot easier to follow the game. It's easier to learn. It's been designed to be user-friendly. So it does give that image to it. However, something on the whole back here, and down here it just has a little sales pitch. In Redemption, you may custom build your own deck. Designing a new deck allows you to continually discover new strategies to victory. However, something's missing on the back here. Do you notice what it is? It doesn't mention anywhere that whether or not this is a 2-player starter. So if people thought that this starter decks thing on the top was just, you know, something to draw attention or perhaps a typo, this should have been the place to reinforce that. Is this, in fact, a 2-player starter deck? So this is where it could have answered that question, but sadly it does not. I would have probably worded the sentence as, you know, this 4th edition starter deck is all that 2 players need to learn how to play the game, and then saving this streamlined rulebook and redesigned game card. What's called a starter deck set, but it needs to explicitly state, if it does in fact contain enough for 2 players, that it does contain enough for 2 players. Otherwise, as far as basic box design is concerned, this is pretty good. I may have included like a list somewhere, like Starter Deck I, Starter Deck J. I believe there's one here in here are Starter Decks I and J, and Rulebook. Also, it only says it includes a rulebook. It doesn't mention like any sort of special counters or anything. So what does that mean? Do we need any counters? Do we need something significant? Well, anyway, if this appeals to somebody, and one of the reasons I think Redemption appeals to a lot of people, and why a lot of other attempts at card games based on religion maybe don't, like Cactus Games also tried to make one called The Mission, which kind of struck me the wrong way, is because, you know, it's about biblical history. So not just, you know, people who are devout religious, it could be people who are maybe less devout in their Christianity, or people who are just more interested in lore and history. This game could appeal to them as well. So, assuming people purchase the deck and take it home, and like I said, SRP $12.50, so $12.50 US, so that's not bad. We take a look at the contents inside. Alright, so let's take a look at what is inside the 4th edition Redemption card set. So, we have our rulebook right there. Repeats the image from the box, so that's not bad. And we have, yes, indeed, 2 decks. So, yes, it is, in fact, a 2-player starter deck. So, in this $12.50 box, we are getting 2 prepared to play decks. Although you can see, based on the ripped up plastic here, I have opened them up. So we have a rule book. First thing it does on the rule book, let's open it up. Oh, it's got rusty staples. Oh, well, this thing is from a while ago. So introduction, game overview, it says that right away. And winning. You open the page, you see what the game's about and how you win. So next page after that, we have the anatomy of a card and how to start the game. And it even says we strongly recommend that you play a few games of these basic decks before adding cards. And I admit I'm cheating a bit here, but one of the reasons they mention that is Rob Anderson, the guy who made the game, mentions a neat little detail about this book, in that it uses examples of cards that are in the deck. So one of these decks is contains Boaz. That's a Ruth theme. We have our dominance. We have our lost souls. Comes with 7 leaves, loaves, and fishes. Okay, this is the apostle and angels deck. And here we go. Yeah, there's some of that comic book art again. Lost souls. When judges govern. So, oh, there's Samson, and there's Gideon from the box. Although Samson's a 12-6, so although was that Samson chained up? Yeah, and Samson's strength. Where is it? Oh, here we are. So there's Boaz. So see, it mentions Boaz onto the field may band to a Ruth hero, and that can be Naomi or it can be Ruth. So it's using examples that you actually find in the deck. So if you look at these examples, it doesn't really need, it's, you go through the deck, it's like, oh, it means these cards. So that's a good way to do it. I've seen a lot of games where they don't use the examples from inside the starter deck. If you make a designated 2-player starter set, then using the literal examples from the starter set is not a bad idea. And like I said, it does come with 2 decks. I think one is actually Old Testament and one is New Testament. So let's take a look. So this one I think is the New Testament deck. So I have Son of God, Angel of the Lord. Oh, they have, it's the same card. They have different card arts and borders, but since they have the same icon and the same name, they're considered the same card. What do we have? So we have some rainbow colored cards. So we have we have Peter and James and John and Andrew, and a bunch of angels and Gabriel, angel at Bethesda. So very, very New Testament. And then we have we have some Old Testament villains. We have the Philistines. So we have Old Testament villains. Oh, we have some New Testament villains too. So it looks like it's a mixture. It might have been interesting to have like OTV, NT on the decks. There are actually cards that specify that they target specifically Old Testament or New Testament characters. And here we have the judges in Ruth. And we have the Romans, Emperor Tiberius, and demons. So Tiberius and the demons might have been more appropriate in the New Testament deck, and the Philistines in the Old Testament deck. But either way, there is definitely some unified color. I showed off how Ruth and Boaz, the cards all band to each other, so there is some theming going on in the deck. So you can get at least a feel for the complexity when you play this game for the first time. So as far as the set goes, it does what it needs to. It includes enough for 2 players, which is a plus, which is honestly something they need to advertise more on the box. If you're doing something cool, like providing enough cards for 2 players, or including something like that, you know, mention that. Like I said, this empty space right here that's just begging to have something slapped on it, have it say 2-player starter set, or starter decks I and J, or something like that. Something to tell people that there is enough for 2 people to learn the game. So that's a look at Redemption. It is pretty basic. It does what it needs to. It does have, again, like I said, this is a secular review, but it has what it needs to. It has a rule book that doesn't have a game mat on it, although Redemption doesn't really need a mat or any sort of, got a nice glossary in the back. It actually has, of course, the deck building is in the back, and they actually have different rules depending on how large your deck is. So it does have all of the basic rules it needs to explain. It uses examples from the deck, so this is pretty good. Doesn't really have a lot of bells and whistles to it. Might have been cool to, like, I don't know. This might be exclusive art for the 2 Son of God cards. Like I said, the borders technically mean nothing. They have been focusing a lot on the aesthetic of the game, and you can see that a lot here. So yeah, that's a look at Redemption. It definitely does what it needs to do. It's not some sort of high-octane thrill experience, but when it comes to sort of bare-bones delivery on what you want to, on what you want your game to emphasize, aside from the fact that the cover fails to mention that it is a 2-player deck, it does what it needs to do. So that's a look at how Redemption gets you to buy its starter deck, and until next time, this is Kodak signing off.